Hey everyone, this is Ben Kerido coming to you from Jerusalem with the From Israel with Love podcast. And we got a big topic today. A lot of crazy things going on in the United States. A week ago, Americans of all political persuasions were shocked and many appalled and outraged when armed FBI agents stormed Mar-A-Lago, former President Trump's world-famous resort and private home. For over 9 hours, federal officers tore through the 128-room building and even Melania Trump's, the former First Lady's, closets of clothing. They prohibited any witnesses from seeing any of this, and they even demanded that the security cameras be turned off. In the aftermath of this highly questionable raid, conservatives and Trump supporters expressed their fury, both in online forums as well as in-person protests. The general consensus of the message was clear. If the FBI can corruptly attack the former president, who is both highly popular and expected to run again, then that means they're coming after you, the voters who support him, next. Left-wing media outlets and political commentary sites lambasted the rhetoric as being violent and dangerous, supposedly. And they blamed the former president himself as being personally responsible in the same manner that they falsely accused Trump regarding the so-called January 6th insurrection. Since the January 6th protesters collectively seem to have forgotten to bring their firearms to this falsely claimed quote-unquote armed insurrection, liberal publications like Time magazine have modified their narrative to the theater of the absurd, now declaring, and I quote, "The mob of Trump supporters that attacked the Capitol began engaging in hand-to-hand combat with law enforcement." Yes, you heard me right. Hand-to-hand combat. Like, Kung Fu or karate or Krav Maga or I don't know what. If Time magazine had its way, we would all believe the ridiculous notion that President Trump, a supposed fascist supervillain full of wily schemes, has a ragtag army of millions of red MAGA hat-wearing Bruce Lees and Jackie Chans ready to overthrow the government with their impeccable mastery of martial arts. And the legacy media just can't seem to understand why their ratings are plummeting. Well, I could take a few guesses and probably figure it out. At any rate, is it really so crazy, though, to believe that conservative Americans are in danger of a politicized Department of Justice and an inexplicably militarized set of federal agencies? James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, who have also been questionably targeted by the FBI, especially in November of 2021, have published an official memo circulated within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security on August 12th of 2022. This DHS memo warns of a, and I quote, heightened threat of domestic violent extremists. But who are these terrorist threats, according to the DHS? The document states that they are American citizens, and I quote, motivated by a range of ideologies, including the perception that the 2020 presidential election was fraudulent and other claims of government overreach. The document also refers to the upcoming 2022 midterm elections as a, quote, potential flashpoint. But don't worry about James O'Keefe or Project Veritas. Legacy media outlets like the New York Times have assured us that they are nothing more than, quote-unquote, political spies and, quote-unquote, pranksters. The American people need to understand the ramifications of this DHS memo and previous documents from that and similar organizations that echo the same sentiment. According to an Axios Momentum poll, and that's certainly not a conservative source, only 55% of Americans actually believe that Joe Biden legitimately won the presidential election of 2022. Now, let's pause for a moment and really stop and think about that. The most powerful nation in the world has a leader that they can't even get 2 out of 3 Americans to actually think is the legitimate leader of that nation. That's a very, very serious and very, very scary matter. Anyway, the real point going on here, though, is that what this means is that the DHS has indicated that up to, or perhaps surpassing, 45% of the population of the United States harbors the ideology of quote-unquote violent extremists and quote-unquote domestic terrorists. But let's just say it like it is. If these polls supposedly indicate that half of Americans think that Biden was legitimately elected and the other half don't, let's get serious. 100% of Americans don't think Biden, who can't even read a teleprompter or form a coherent sentence, was actually legitimately elected. 50% are telling the truth and 50% are lying, is the real situation. At any rate, It's incredibly important to note the concept that the Department of Homeland Security decries literally half of all American citizens to be a dangerous threat requiring prudence and possibly even mitigation up to and including prosecution and or lethal force is a terrifying nightmare of Orwellian proportions. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is presently celebrating the passing of the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, a bill that has little to nothing to do with inflation. Instead, one part of the bill calls for the explosive expansion of the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, by over 87,000 more employees, including armed agents and stockpiles of weapons and ammunition. To put into perspective, the increase to the IRS is well over 4 times greater than the entire Border Patrol, a federal agency that is completely overrun with real threats like drug smugglers, human traffickers, and an uncontrolled influx of illegal immigrants, all of which is due to Biden's disastrous border policies. Conservative concerns about the IRS are more than founded. We have seen this story before during President Barack Obama's second term. Conservative groups, labeled as the Tea Party movement at the time, were blatantly targeted by the IRS, making it difficult for them to operate and therefore serving as a form of election interference. This trend was so disturbing that Piers Morgan, of all people, a popular liberal political commentator on CNN, defined it as quote-unquote vague tyranny, and he all but apologized in June of 2013 to Second Amendment advocates for his mocking criticism of their position that a constitutionally armed citizenry was vital for ensuring the ongoing freedom of the population. And let's just say it like it is. When Piers Morgan, when that man is the voice of reason, acknowledging the tyrannical demise of America nearly a decade in advance, boy, are we in some serious trouble. Throughout the Obama administration, federal agencies had been stockpiling weapons and ammunition, all while Democratic political leaders screamed that the population must be deprived of their own constitutionally protected armaments. For instance, in 2014, the United States Department of Agriculture inexplicably sought to purchase submachine guns of the .40 caliber range with burst capabilities as well as over 300,000 hollow point rounds, which aren't even used by the United States military due to international law. So we all have to ask an obvious question. Why does the USDA, an agency that regulates such activities as farming and dairy production, need weapons and ammunition commonly used for crowd control and urban warfare? Well, they wouldn't say. Just like the U.S. Post Office and even the Social Security Administration in 2014 didn't explain why they were seeking to bolster their own stockpile of ammunition. The recent Inflation Reduction Act seeks to add over $700,000 worth of bullets to the present IRS stockpile of 5 million rounds. Unlike local police departments that are often railed upon by radical leftists, all cops are bad, and that's saying it nicely, and that whole crowd, these federal agencies have no accountability or vested interest in the communities that they serve. Instead, their loyalty is to the political power presently in control of the executive branch. But the granddaddy of them all is the Department of Homeland Security. During Obama's second term, DHS, which only operates domestically on American soil, began the process of acquiring over 1.6 billion with a B, rounds, including both hollow points and sniper ammunition. Let's be very, very clear, ladies and gentlemen. That's enough armament and ammunition for DHS agents to shoot every man, woman, and child in America, up to 5 times. Are we facing a repeat, but even worse, of the tyrannical methodology of Obama? Keep in mind that a politically motivated full IRS audit would allow the federal government to scrutinize an individual citizen's finances, including contributions to conservative politicians and/or PACs. And if the IRS declares that an individual has, quote-unquote, aided insurrectionists and violent extremists, or accuses, even falsely or excessively, an American citizen of tax evasion, those are alleged crimes that allow for armed raids, arrests, imprisonment, and a revocation of key constitutional rights as a pending or convicted felon, including the rights to vote and own firearms. Now, does this sound too far-fetched? It shouldn't. This is exactly what is being done to former President Donald J. Trump and his allies even as we speak. For weeks, more like months actually, A one-sided congressional committee has been, quote-unquote, investigating the notion that Donald Trump is a treasonous leader of an insurrection. And Democratic New York State prosecutors have been tearing apart the Trump Organization and its officers, with Trump himself being the ultimate target, for years on dubious accusations of tax evasion that even the New York Times and Vox magazine admit are weak and highly unusual. And I'm quoting them there, which lends strong credence to Trump's resounding refrain of legal witch hunts. So we must ask ourselves a very, very serious question. If conservatives were targeted before by Obama and the IRS, if Trump and his allies like Paul Manafort and General Michael Flynn were hounded endlessly all throughout his presidency, and if Trump and others are still shamelessly targeted even now by a politically motivated Department of Justice that conveniently ignores known offenders like Hillary Clinton, like Hunter Biden, and like every single one of Jeffrey Epstein's clients, then are we as conservative Americans next on the target list? But a warning, don't ask this question too loud. The Department of Homeland Security, with their stockpile of literally billions of bullets, has made it alarmingly clear that expressing such fear for the welfare of ourselves and our families from government overreach, as well as concern about the future of the great and free American nation, is the sign of a very dangerous person. A violent domestic extremist. This has been Kerido coming to you from Jerusalem. Until next time, over and out. Hey everyone, this is Ben Kerido here to tell you about my brand new book that I wrote with my wife, Surat, called Let's Go Brandon the Novel. It's a satirical parody in the style of Orwell's 1984, The Babylon Bee, and Fauda. It's both a suspenseful and hilarious portrayal of current affairs in the American, Israeli, and Middle Eastern political arenas and military spheres, and includes some delightfully vicious yet comical mockery of Biden, AOC, and many others. For a limited time, the book is being made available for free or heavily discounted to our readers. Check it out on Amazon or visit our website, itowerpublishing.com. Links in the video description.